Okay. So I hope it's visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I have said that there were two major policies with regard to education. Of course, you have the national education policy, which is announced periodically. But apart from that, if you're talking about the operational side, you have two major policy stimulus. One was the midday meal scheme, which we have analyzed before. The second is the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. So in today's class, I'm the going to discuss the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan or SSA in short, and I'll first go through the history, the evolution of SSA, the objectives, and how far the SSA has been successful. Now, the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan has a pretty long history. In fact, a longer history than you can see from its website. But actually, it started in 93-94 in the District Primary Education Program. This program had been introduced with the objective of ensuring universal primary education. At the end of the last millennium, it covered 272 districts in 18 states of the country. Then, around at the start of this century, in 2001-2, it was decided that the DPEP would be changed and it would become part of a flagship program, the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. The objective was the same, ensuring universal primary education. What happened was there were several small schemes relating to education. All of them were combined and formed into one large flagship program. So DPEP was the main component. You also had some smaller schemes. Then in 2010-11, when the Rights to Education Act was introduced, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan was again revised. The objective shifted from providing universal primary education, which is 5 years of education, to rights under the Rights to Education, which covers not just primary but middle level also, 8 years of education. The strategic objectives of SSA is threefold. All children should have access to elementary schooling facilities. Okay, and this should be of initially it was 5 years, now it is 8 years. Second is all children in the age group 6 to 14 should be in school. You have to provide them a minimum of 8 years of education. And third is there are some gaps, spatial gaps, that is in some states enrollment dropout is a major problem. There's a gender gap. Girls are lagging behind in enrollment and primary level, particularly middle level. You also have gaps between social religious groups. Certain minority groups, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, OBCs, children from these groups have a lower educational attainment rates. So education should be made more inclusive. Everyone should get it, and by everyone we mean cutting across space, gender, and socio-religious identity. Now, how were the objectives to be attained? There are many other many other components, but we can identify 5 main components. Infrastructural improvements, which comprises of upgrading the existing schools. You open new schools, then you add classrooms, you add toilets, ramps, and other infrastructural facilities. And finally, you provide free textbooks. Another is that in the upper primary level, you should provide computer education. Who is Minoti De?
So I actually logged in from
আচ্ছা
my grandmother's phone. My phone
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা
display is not working very
আচ্ছা
well.
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে ঠিক আছে হ্যাঁ কারণ কয়েক সময় উল্টোপাল্টা কেউ ঢুকে পড়তে পারে তো দ্যাট মে ক্রিয়েট প্রবলেমস ফর দ্য ক্লাস দ্যাটস ওয়াই অ্যালাউড ইউ ইন বাট আই ওয়ান্টেড টু চেক in fact there has been some attempts to hack the videos.
No, sir, that's just me.
কে বলছে এটা
So
Who
Mehuli.
said it? না মানে ইউ মিন দ্যাট ইউ আর এন্ট্রিং তো ওইটা ওইটা তুমি বলতে চাইছিলে
Yes, sir.
মানে হ্যাকিং
Hi, sir.
ইনসিডেন্ট ওয়াজ
What am
হ্যাঁ কারণ হ্যাকিংটা ইট ওয়াজ প্রিটি ব্যাড you can understand what it was. দাঁড়াও okay so you have another type of upgradation was with regard to computer education. Then there should be appointment of faculty and training the existing faculty. Another component was that there should be innovative interventions for those who are lagging behind, like girls, children belonging to backward social groups, slum children, out of school children. So there should be some specific intervention programs addressing their needs. And lastly, in order to facilitate bottoms up planning, get the feedbacks from the grassroots level and pass it on to the central policymakers, there should be block resource centers, BRCs, and cluster resource centers. So you basically have a pyramidical approach. The instructions flow down from the top and feedback on how it's being administered at the grassroots level filters up through these BRCs and CRCs. Now let's start with the BRCs and CRCs.
বলবেন এটা বিআরসি যেটা বলছেন
দেখো এটার খুব ডিটেলসে আমি যেতে চাইছি না মানে যেটা হচ্ছে ব্লক লেভেলে ওদের কিছু ইউনিট সেট আপ করা হচ্ছে ঠিক আছে আবার কিছু ব্লক মিলে একটা ক্লাস্টার ফর্ম করা হচ্ছে সো সাপোজ ইউ বিলং টু দ্য ব্লক তোমরা হচ্ছে সবাই হচ্ছে ব্লক লেভেল অল অফ ইউ আর ইন চার্জ অফ আ বিআরসি বিআরসি গুলো কম্বাইন করে একটা ক্লাস্টার করা হচ্ছে আই এম ইন চার্জ অফ দ্য ক্লাস্টার তো যেটা হচ্ছে যে ওপর থেকে যখন কোনো ইনস্ট্রাকশন আসছে ফ্রম দিল্লি আই এম পাসিং ইট অন টু ইউ আর তোমরা আবার আমাকে ফিডব্যাক দিচ্ছ যে when I'm implementing these policy changes or instructions, then I'm facing this problem. I'm being successful in implementing these measures, but I'm not able to implement these measures. এরকম আর কি So you'll give me feedbacks, and I will pass it on to the center, so they will revise the instructions accordingly. এখন থিওরিটিক্যালি ইটস ফাইন ওপর থেকে ইনস্ট্রাকশন আসছে দিস ইজ চেকড উইথ what is feasible at the grassroots level so it's good planning the problem was যে এই যে ডিআরসি বা সিআরসি বা ব্লক লেভেল বা ইভেন ডিস্ট্রিক্ট লেভেলে you need an institutional structure which will implement and monitor the decisions properly. You need staff, you need resources. The problem is, and obviously the staff has to be trained. মানে ধরো তোমাদেরকে আমি এই মুহূর্তে যদি নিয়ে যাই নিয়ে গিয়ে একটা বিআরসিতে বসিয়ে দিই you don't have the necessary training to do it successfully. ঠিক আছে, অনেক জায়গাতে যেটা হচ্ছে যে the staff was not there, they didn't have the services. So in this way, the BRCs and CRCs were not functioning properly. এদেরকে স্ট্রেনথেন করবার জন্য যে স্টেপসগুলো নেসেসারি, দ্য স্টেপস ওয়ে অলসো নট ইন্ট্রোডিউসড বাই দ্য সেন্ট্রাল গভর্নমেন্ট। জাস্ট বলে দিল যে তুমি একটা বিআরসি ফর্ম করো, তুমি একটা সিআরসি ফর্ম করো, এরকম। দ্য সেট আপ ওয়াজ নট দে, বাট ইট ওয়াজ নট effectively created. You can see the skeleton structure was created. It did not have any content. Funds is another issue in successful implementation of any program. এবং যেটা what I had told you earlier, that the financial issue was at several dimensions. See, what happens is every year the relevant ministry makes a budgetary allocation. So this means they say that, okay, I'm going to give you X amount. This X amount is supposed to be disbursed throughout the year. The amount that is actually disbursed is called the disbursed amount. Okay. And finally, out of the disbursal, you have to spend the amount. So expenditure is of three types: the budgeted or allocated, the sanctioned or disbursed, and the amount that is actually spent. Okay. In each of the three levels, you had problem. First of all, after 2009, initially from 2004 onwards, under the first UPA government, the expenditure on education increased. Around 2004-5, Sonia Gandhi had made an announcement, had publicly acknowledged that expenditure on health and education was very poor, and the objective would be to increase the expenditure on both education and health in terms of GDP. So expenditure on education as a percentage of GDP, that has to be increased. It was far below that of countries with similar levels of growth, far below even other South Asian countries like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and so on. So, under the first UPA government, UPA 1, initially expenditure as a percentage of GDP increased. After 2009, that is UPA 2, the expenditure plateaued off. The budgeted amount did not rise. It was constant. There were some marginal decreases in some years. Second is, out of the budgeted amount, how much are you releasing or disbursing? That percentage also fell. 3, out of the amount that you are getting, how much are you spending? That also has remained very poor. So what you can see, it is something like this. Let us suppose initially the budgeted amount is 100, sanctioned is 70, and disbursed is, let us say, 70, and the amount spent is 50. In the next period, prices go up. Okay, so you should also, in order to maintain expenditure in real terms, you should increase your budget. What happened was, budget was either 100 or it was even lowered. The amount disbursed was again lowered, and the amount spent, let us make it easy to understand, 35, so this is 50%. Let us make it 60. তাহলে পার্সেন্টেজ টার্মসে আমি কত স্পেন্ড করছি? অনলি 30%। আর এখানে কত করছিলাম? 50%। $35% of budget. This is 25% of budget. So this is the main thing. And you can see, আমরা যদি বাজেটটা কমিয়ে দিই, ডিসবার্সাল কমিয়ে দিই, তাতেই তোমার স্পেন্ডটা কমবে। ঠিক আছে? তার উপরে আবার দ্য স্টেট গভর্নমেন্টস were not being able to spend the entire amount. There was a problem with spending. Okay, so as a result of this, the financial side of SSA ran into major problems from 2009-10 onwards, just when the rights to education was introduced. So is this point clear? Will I repeat it or will I go on to the next slide?
স্যার
Hmm.
স্যার বলছি প্ল্যাটোয়িং অফ পাবলিক এক্সপেন্ডিচারটা একবার একটু বলবেন, মানে ওটা বুঝতে পারিনি।
ফ্ল্যাটিং অফ মানে কি হচ্ছে, যে তোমার মানে what was said was the expenditure on education by the government. I'm talking about government expenditure. এইটা তাহলে এটা পার্সেন্টেজ টার্মসে হচ্ছে, this is very low around 2000. From 2004 onwards to 2009, it increased, but from 2009-10 onwards, it again became constant. Okay, so the governments are not really spending on the education and health sectors. It became constant, it fell in certain years. And here you have to realize one thing, that suppose you're spending 100 crores in a particular year. ঠিক আছে, ধরো তোমার এটা হচ্ছে 21-22-তে। In the next year, this is your budget. So has expenditure gone up? Next year instead of হ্যাঁ ঠিক আছে, অ্যালোকেশন ওগুলো বাদ দাও। Has the budgeted amount increased?
Yes, sir.
স্যার ইনফ্লেশন থাকবে তো তাই জন্য। আচ্ছা
What happens? Suppose price is 5. So what is the real expenditure? 20. এটা হয়ে যাচ্ছে, এটা একটু এক্সট্রিম করে দিয়েছি আমি, 5.5, 10 ধরলেই ভালো হয়।
ফল করে
What has happened? Real expenditure has fallen. So I've made it a bit drastic. এতটা fast inflation হয় না। It will be 7-8. But even if you take a 7-8 inflation, তুমি দেখো এখানে খুব একটা it is going to fall. So that is one thing. And secondly, as you, one of you said, that this is only the budgeted amount. The allocation, how much is actually released, how much is actually spent. সেটা কিন্তু আমাকে দেখতে হবে। Now, as we have pointed out in 2009, the right to education was passed by the parliament. So the right to education was not simply that children have to be provided education. The quality of education, the conditions under which education is going to be provided was also specified under this act. The rights to education pointed out that, okay, if you set up a school for a class 1 student who is age about 6 or 7 years, and the school is 5 miles from his or her home, that is not really creating an infrastructure. Okay, schools have to be set up in such a way that they are accessible. So that is one thing. So the distance from the residence to the school was important. The second thing was, what is the type of school being provided? You can just have a single room, a large room, where in one corner you have the class 1 students, in another corner you have the class 2 students, and you have one teacher who is just going about or maybe shouting, hey, class 1, bolte Baba Black Sheep, class 2, follow. 1 into 2 is 2, 2 into 2 is 4, 3 into 3 is 9, is 10, 4 into 4 is 14, বলে যাও। এটাও একটা ক্লাসরুম, কোনো বাউন্ডারি ওয়াল নেই, ওয়াটার সাপ্লাই নেই, প্লেগ্রাউন্ড নেই। So the right to education also set down some norms. How far the school can be from the residence, and norms regarding playgrounds, construction of boundary walls, classroom, library facilities, and so on. So it was found that targets for constructing classrooms, constructing toilets, and providing drinking water was more or less attained. So infrastructure create with regard to number of classrooms, toilets, and drinking water, the progress was satisfactory. The problem was regarding the availability of playgrounds. 36% of schools don't have any playgrounds. 52% don't have boundary walls. So while you are studying, তোমাদের ক্লাসরুমে হয়তো একটা গরু ঢুকে হাম্বা হাম্বা করে ঘুরে বেরিয়ে চলে যাবে। Separate classrooms for each class, library facilities. These are areas where you have the shortfalls. Another area where there was a shortfall was separate girls' toilet instead of co-ed toilet. There has been improvement. DICE data shows that there has been improvement, but the shortfall is still far from what is required. If you look at computer schools, 76% of computer schools have 76% of schools have computer facilities, which is very good. But the problem is computer facilities are being used in only 11% of schools. Why? One is there's no electricity. Two, computers are not being maintained. So after purchase, they break down. And third is there are no teachers who know how to use the computers. So if the funds are released, they simply purchase the computer, then it is kept aside. It is not used. Distance from school. 81% of children had a school facility within a distance of 1 kilometer. 15% have to travel between 1 to 3 kilometers. And 3% travel more than 3 kilometers. Okay, this is acceptable. These figures are not too bad. The problem is these are only the averages. in Bihar, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, the percentage of over here, these two percentages are quite high, much higher than the national averages. So that means there are schools, but the schools are at a distance, and given the fact that the children in the primary level are very young, it's difficult for the children to access the schools. DICE data reveals that 196 million children were enrolled in 15-16. In 2010, it was 189. So there has been a marginal increase. The increase is there, but only 4%, which is not very high. But again, it may be a natural leveling out. As enrollment is coming to 100%, see, enrollment cannot be more than 100%. So as we move towards 100%, it becomes flatter. So that means if we take 2 time points over here, you can see the growth rate is pretty fast. But if we take a similar time period over here, the growth rate will be slower. So this is a natural leveling off. I won't say it's too concerning. The problem is elsewhere. The growth has been, the increase in enrollment has been mostly for private managed schools. The number of children in government sector, public schools, are decreasing. So this is something that Kingdon had pointed out before, that you have a very large private sector in education. The gender gap in enrollment has decreased, and it has been seen that enrollment, this gender gap, is very sensitive to the infrastructure. So if you can create an infrastructure which is sensitive, which is very girl friendly, you have separate girls toilet, you have female teachers, then parents are more comfortable about sending their daughters to school. In that case, the gender gap in that particular locality is going to come down. But if you don't create such a girl-friendly infrastructure in those areas, the gender gap is remaining high. Now, enrollment is only one side. You can enroll, after that you can stop coming. You drop out. You don't attend. But attendance and enrollment too has increased. Again, there's a dark lining. If you look at socially marginalized groups, then these groups are dropping out, particularly in the post-primary level, in the middle level. In fact, at the middle level, from between class 6 to 8, the maximum dropouts are occurring over here. As I've told you before, there may be many reasons for this. One is that people are interested in functional literacy. So primary education is sufficient. After that, they feel that education will be costly, but your earnings will not go up to that extent. So there's no point in investing in education. The second reason may be that budgets are tight. So if a young child comes in, the older child drops out. You have some sort of a relay system. So dropout at the middle level is still a concerning feature of the Indian education system. Turning to faculty, again the number has gone up from 6.2 million to 8.27, almost 25%. but 13% of them are contractual, which means they don't have the incentive to teach properly. The number of single teacher schools is 7%, which is still quite high. That means in the entire school, you just have one teacher who's moving from group to group, teaching the different classes. The gender gap has come down, 48% of female teachers, which is okay. Training, yeah, 75% are trained, but again, that means 1 out of every 4 are not trained. So as a result of this, the increase in number of faculty, the pupil-teacher ratio has increased. But again, there are some exception. Bihar, UP, for instance, the student-teacher ratio is very low. Sorry, I should say it has decreased. Increase is bad, isn't it? Okay. Okay. So overall, we can see that the Sarva Shiksha Abhijan had made some progress, particularly in the first decade, between 2004 to 2009. But after education was made a right, instead of scaling up the efforts, the progress actually, there was a deterioration. See, if you look at the years is 2015-16. So the current central government had come to power only 1 or 2 years before this. They had come to power in May 2014. So 14 to 15, 15 to 16. So only 2 years. So the main fault of what has happened between 2009-10 to 15-16 is UPA 2. So the UPA 2 started the slide, but the current central government has continued this noble tradition of reducing expenditure on education, downgrading education. And so one can expect that the situation is still worse. If you undertake a survey now, it is going to be even worse. Obviously, the last 2 years are exceptions, outliers. But if you do a survey in 2019-20, it would have revealed an even more dismal picture. Now, one of the objectives of inclusive education was of the DPAP, SSA, right to education, was that education should be inclusive. That is, girls, children from socially backward communities should also be educated. There has been a lot of progress in this regard, but the progress is, we are still lagging behind substantially. And in fact, I had done a study for West Bengal in 2009-10, and what we had found was that the situation in West Bengal was actually had been worsening during the left front government. So instead of education becoming more inclusive, education was becoming more exclusive. So what is the reason? What is the problem? First, let us look at the status over here. See, if you look at this is forward caste, ST, SC, OBC, Muslim, other minorities. Look at this. This is all 20% or even more. Look at the figure for forward caste. Less than 5, well, let's say it's 5%. So only 5%, 1 in 20 out of forward caste are illiterate, but 1 out of 5 among SCs, STs and Muslims are illiterate. These figures, by the way, are for urban India. If we look at the population with below primary and primary level, see, this is 3, this is 9, 9, 11. OBC is also high. Look at primary, 6, but this is, yeah. Okay, so if you look at the bottom two categories, you see that the representation of forward castes are very low. If you combine them, it is how much? 7, 8%. This is how much? 29. This will be about 30. This is even higher, 34. Let us move to the upper extreme. So high figures here is good. You have 41%. Not good, but okay. But look at ST, only 23%. SC, even lower, 15%. Muslims, 12%. Abysmally low. OBCs, 23%. So these two categories are very low. SCs and Muslims, horrible.
Sir,
Yeah.
what is the expansion of SRCs which is used at the top of the table?
Socio-religious community.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So basically this is, we are combining information on the caste and religion. Okay. Actually, this is a study which was made by one of my students in IIT and which was published in EPW. Okay. If you look at the quality of education, 1/4 of Muslim students study in unrecognized schools. 64% study in schools which provide subsidized education. Okay, so mostly they study in unrecognized schools which are not financially sound. Only 15% are enrolled in English medium schools. Now, of course, these are not very good, robust figures, because English medium schools can vary in quality. You have La Martiniere, but you also have local schools which are of pretty dubious quality. So I've given the figures for Muslims, but it's also true for SCs and STs. For OBCs, actually, the problem is that it's midway, depending on the specific caste. Depending on the specific caste, or rather subcaste, there are some OBCs which are quite well off, and there are some OBCs whose condition is even worse than SCs and STs. So you'll get an average for OBCs, but the variation will be very high. It is also believed that, okay, I'll come to this slide first. Now, why is the education level so poor? In 1871, Hunter had given an explanation that in terms of demand side. He argued that backward communities do not value education as much as forward communities do. They believe that education is valueless, it does not provide any sense, in fact, it destabilizes society. People, particularly girls, will get very odd sorts of ideas, mobility, empowerment, etc. And so education is actually something which is bad and should be avoided. The second explanation is supply side. A Prime Minister's high-level committee had shown that in areas which are dominated by backward groups, they often have very inadequate infrastructure. So as a result of this, the cost of education is higher for the backward communities. I mean, you can have different things. One is that the school may be very far off. The school may have just one teacher, one classroom. You don't have proper toilets, proper drinking water facilities, and so on. Now, a third school tries to integrate both the demand side and supply side aspects. Regarding the demand side, they say that this Hunter's theory is wrong. Disadvantaged communities do accept the importance of education, but they face higher costs of education. I'm not talking about the money cost of education in terms of opportunity cost. And second is, they believe, see, what is important is not the cost or benefit, but the net benefits, benefit minus cost. They believe that net benefit is very low. So if net benefit is very low, then there's no point in educating the children. Another explanation that is often offered is that majority of Muslims prefer to enroll their children in madrasas, which provide religious education, which is cheap and which is not linked with the job market. And this lowers the skill and productivity of Muslim workers even further. But using NCRT data, we had shown that only 4% of all children, Muslim children, were enrolled in madrasas. And we made the assumption that all the children enrolled in madrasas are Muslims. That actually is not a true assumption. But even if we make the assumption, enrollment in madrasas is a negligible part. And it is mainly poverty, the lack of school in such areas that forces the parents to send their children to madrasas. In some cases, undoubtedly, the parents are conservative. They want the children to go to madrasas. But that proportion is even lower. It is mainly supply side constraints which are important and lead to enrollment in madrasas. Okay, so I'll just stop at this point and come back in 2-3 minutes. Okay, sorry. Okay. So we can see that there are some that the two facts. One is that the educational attainments of some socio-religious groups is very concerning, and we have to take steps to improve the educational attainments. The second is this raises the question that what is the cause? Unless we know the cause, it's not possible to introduce remedial measures. Okay. So in this paper, we looked at different type of explanation based on the concept of statistical discrimination. So suppose you have a distribution like this. So this is the productivity, different productivity, and this is the probability distribution function. So most of the workers are in the intermediate range. You have some exceptional workers and some workers who are very lazy, incompetent workers. Okay, now you have two groups of workers. The group A workers, the employers perceive that a worker who belongs to group A will be given by this orange curve. So you have two distributions depending upon which category you come from, group A or group B. You can see group B are in general more productive. But if you look at this range, you can see that there are some group A workers who are more productive than the group B workers. Okay. Now we introduce over here the returns to education. So we are plotting the returns to education, which is wages, and we are over here, the x-axis is the education level. So this is the socially disadvantaged group and this is the socially advantaged group. Let us suppose that both of them start from an education level of E1. Now, because of statistical discrimination, right, you don't know how productive a particular worker is, but you know that which group he comes from, whether he comes from A or whether he comes from B. Okay, so tell me, suppose two people have come, an A worker and a B worker. Will you pay the same wage rate to both of them? So this is, you can say, the same problem as the one that we had discussed in microeconomics. Adverse selection. The worker knows his own productivity or quality, but the employer doesn't have this information. There's information asymmetry. So the only information that the employer has is whether the worker belongs to group A or group B. He does not know how efficient that particular worker is. So in this situation, if two workers come, will you give them the same wage rate or will you give them different wage rates? Oishi?
Yes, sir.
What is the question that I'd ask you?
Sir, will the workers be given the same wage rate or different wage rates?
So what is your answer?
Sir, different wage rates.
Okay. Why?
Um,
আচ্ছা, স্বপ্নীল, will you try?
Sir, could you repeat?
হ্যাঁ, বলছি যে এখানে Oishi is right when she says that you will pay different wage rates, but what is the logic for paying different wage rates?
Sir, maybe because like how do I like if I had to put it in words, sir, we are paying different wage rates. Maybe because they're not exactly as efficient as one another, and like the one who is hiring is trying to reduce the wage bill as much as he or she can. Something on this line, if I'm not wrong.
স্যার বলছিলাম
Unfortunately, you are no. হ্যাঁ, বলো দর্পক।
স্যার বলছিলাম যে একজন গ্রুপ এ থেকে এসছে আর একজন গ্রুপ বি থেকে এসছে,
হ্যাঁ,
তাহলে স্যার মানে আগে যে নলেজটা আছে যে গ্রুপ এর ওয়ার্কাররা কেমন আর গ্রুপ বি এর ওয়ার্কাররা কেমন, সেই অনুযায়ী আমি ওয়েজটা আলাদা দিচ্ছি।
আচ্ছা, নলেজ না বলে পারসেপশন বলা ভালো,
ও
তাই না? কারণ দেখো, এইখানে কিছু গ্রুপ বি ওয়ার্কার আছে, ধরো এইখানে একটা ওয়ার্কার এলো আর এইখানে একটা ওয়ার্কার এলো, তাহলে কে বেশি প্রোডাক্টিভ?
তাহলে
গ্রুপ এর
যেটা
ওয়ার্কারটা বেশি প্রোডাক্টিভ।
না স্যার গ্রুপ, হ্যাঁ স্যার কোন জায়গাগুলো বললেন? একটা হচ্ছে লালের শেষটা আর সবুজের শেষটা।
হ্যাঁ, একটা হচ্ছে এইখানে, এখান থেকে গ্রুপ বি এলো,
হুম
আর এখান থেকে ধরো গ্রুপ এ এলো। মানে
স্যার
গ্রুপ
তাহলে
বি,
তো আমার কাছে পারফেক্ট ইনফরমেশন থাকবে না, না যে কে বেটার আর কে বেটার না।
হ্যাঁ মানে ও এখানে কোন জায়গাটাতে আছে সেটা তুমি জানো না। ইউ ক্যান বি
হ্যাঁ
এনিওয়ে
স্যার।
ওভার হিয়ার। If you have this information, then it's fine. But because you have asymmetric information, তুমি সিম্পলি একটা এক্সটার্নাল মার্কারের ওপর বেস করে বলো।
হ্যাঁ স্যার, মানে তাহলে আমার মানে যে মানে যারা হায়ার করছে ওয়ার্কার্স থেকে তারা একটা
হ্যাঁ
পারসেপশনের উপরে বেস করে ডিফারেন্ট ওয়েজেস দেবে।
হ্যাঁ, এক হচ্ছে পারসেপশন,
আমাদের
আর
কি
সেকেন্ডলি
টিকটক করতে হবে?
কি করতে হবে? চিপ টক? না, এখানে চিপ
হ্যাঁ
টকের
স্যার,
কোনো
কারণ
ব্যাপার
আমরা
নেই।
আচ্ছা
মানে তুমি আসছো, তোমাকে আমি জাস্ট দেখছি, তোমার বাইরে তুমি জিনিসটা দেখে তোমাকে আমি সিলেক্ট করছি। চিপ টকে ইউ হ্যাভ টু মেক আ ক্লেম। তোমাকে আমি জিজ্ঞেস করছি তুমি প্রোডাক্টিভ কি ইনকম্পিটেন্ট, ইনএফিশিয়েন্ট। এখানে আমি সেরকম কিছু বলছি না। আচ্ছা, তাহলে এখানে আমরা দেখছি যে গ্রুপ যারা সোশ্যালি ডিসঅ্যাডভান্টেজ, গ্রুপ এ ওয়ার্কার্স, দে আর গোয়িং টু গেট লোয়ার ওয়েজেস। ঠিক আছে, তাহলে ধরো এখানে আমরা ঠিক করলাম যে এডুকেশনটা বাড়াবো ফ্রম E1 to E2. Let us assume for simplicity that cost of education is the same. আচ্ছা, what is the benefit to education? আচ্ছা, কারেন্টলি আমার রিটার্নস টু এডুকেশন কত? এতটা, এইটি। আমি যদি E2 তে যাই, my returns is going to go up by, is going to become this much. তাহলে এইটা হচ্ছে ইনক্রিজ, এইটা A to D। Is it clear? আর গ্রিন যারা সোশ্যালি অ্যাডভান্টেজ, তাদের ক্ষেত্রে দেখো তাদের রিটার্নস টু এডুকেশন ছিল এতটা, দে ওয়ার আর্নিং সো মাচ। ইফ ইউ ইনক্রিজ এডুকেশন টু হিয়ার, it's now going to become rise to this amount. তাহলে ইনক্রিজ হচ্ছে কত? এই গ্রিন ব্র্যাকেটটা। ঠিক আছে?
Sir, can I ask something here?
হ্যাঁ,
Sir, why is like CD greater than AB here when we are increasing the amount of education?
Because of this.
Oh yeah, right. Okay, sir.
Okay, so what we are getting, the net benefit is benefit minus cost. So cost is same. Okay. The cost is same. তাহলে আমরা এইভাবে লিখতে পারি, this C and this C is same. So net benefit will be greater for the forward or advantage groups, right? আচ্ছা, এইবারে আমি যদি ধরি, আচ্ছা, if BA is greater than BD, the net benefit of advantage groups is greater to net benefit of disadvantage groups. আর সেকেন্ড যে কস্ট, আমি যদি ধরে নিই যে এই কস্টটা লোয়ার, তাহলে তো এটা আরো ইনক্রিজ করবে, তাই না? So now the question is that suppose the parents are contemplating investing in education. What will be the decision of the advantaged group? Will they invest in increasing education from E1 to E2?
No, sir, they won't.
Can no?
So the disadvantaged
I'm
parents.
talking. No, I'm talking about the advantage group.
Okay, sir. The advantaged group will increase education because the costs are lower for them.
And benefits are higher.
Yes, sir.
And if I come to the socially disadvantaged group, their benefits are lower, costs are high. So it is likely that the net benefits will be negative. Okay, so if we consider this in a time frame, in T0, initial time, the education level is the same. So both communities are in E1. What happens in the next time period? The advantage group moves to E2 over here. And what happens to the disadvantage group? They remain at E1. Okay. So over here, I started off with a perception that the disadvantaged group is inefficient. What happens in the next period? Now there is really an efficiency gap. The education levels are different, and now the perceived efficiency gap has become a reality. ইনিশিয়ালি তোমার ধারণা ছিল, সে ধারণাটা ভুল, হয়তো এরকম কোনো ডিস্ট্রিবিউশনই ছিল না, ডিস্ট্রিবিউশনটা এরকমই হয়তো রাফলি, ঠিক আছে? কিন্তু তুমি মনে করছিলে যে এটা এরকম না, এটা এরকম। কিন্তু ওভার টাইম কি হয়ে গেছে, এই এফিসিয়েন্সি গ্যাপটা কিন্তু it becomes part of the reality. There is a real education gap. Because of your perceptions in T0, the disadvantaged group starts conforming to your belief. They start behaving in a manner that conforms to your belief. And they really become backward. এইটাকে কৌশিক বাসু বলছে self-fulfilling equilibrium. Do you understand this self-fulfilling equilibrium? মানে যেটা হচ্ছে যে সোসাইটি বলছে যে তুমি খারাপ when you are not actually bad. But because society is telling you repeatedly that you are bad, you start changing your behavior and you really become bad in terms of low levels of education, low efficiency levels. So in order to test this, what we had done was we had looked at the returns to education. So we regressed this education, ran this regression model. Earnings, daily earnings was regressed on education and experience. It was run for each socio-religious groups. Okay. And it was found that this is the difference. You can see there's no FC. So you can see that it is sorry, what is it? এটা হচ্ছে তোমার FC minus returns to returns to education for forward caste minus returns to education for a particular caste. So positive means that forward castes have higher levels of education. And you can see that this is what we are getting over here. It's positive, but it is negative over here. So initially, the forward castes have low levels of low returns to low education. But after the high school level, they enjoy a benefit. Further, if you look at the occupational structure, these are the high-paying occupations: clerks, technicians, legislators, professionals, and so on. So you can see that these four highest-paying occupations, 50% of forward caste workers are concentrated in the high-paying occupations. It's 30% for Muslims, just above 20% for SCs and STs, 30% for OBCs also. Look at the low-paying occupations. SCs, 50% are located in the two least paying occupations. ST is also almost 40%. This is about 35%. Forward caste less than 20%. So what you see is that most of the forward caste workers are located in occupations which are high paying. Most of the backward caste members are concentrated in occupations which are low paying. Okay. Secondly, if you compare with even within the sector, you will see that if you look at professionals, the mean earning is 803, but Muslims are getting 591, OBC 697, SC 667, ST 749. So that means even in the high-paying sectors, these backward or marginalized classes are getting a lower wage rate, a wage rate which is lower than the market rate. So there is a double burden. They are concentrated in low-paying occupations, and within these occupational categories, they are earning less than the market rate. There has been some interesting qualitative studies. A study by Dutt and Pandey কিনা মনে নেই, পান্ডে ছিল, ফার্স্ট অথারটা আমার ঠিক মনে নেই, ওয়ার্ল্ড ব্যাংকের একটা স্টাডি ছিল. They took a group of school-going children. These children were taken, they were mixed up, and they were told to, the seating arrangement was mixed up, and they were given a question paper which was objective. So it was found that the school-going children, uh, the scores were compared between backward castes and forward caste, and it was found that there was no statistically difference in scores. The average score was same for both the groups. Then the STs were told that, okay, you sit over here, and the forward caste was told that you sit in a different place. So now you have an identification. We can clearly see from the sitting arrangement who belongs to which caste. It was found that the same students appeared in the second exam, and now it was found that the forward caste were scoring better on an average. Third, they were told that okay, you have to write down your caste on the question paper, and this information is going to be given to the teachers. The gap increased. The gap in average scores increased. So you can see that the impact of caste, I mean, it's very easy to say that there are certain social groups which do not believe in the value of education. But what is the reason behind this belief? Why they believe that education is not will not give me benefits is more subtle than what Hunter had believed. So you have to be a bit careful, and in fact, the results show that there is a long history of social discrimination can result in this perception. It's not the same as saying that education does not have any value. What these people are saying is that education is without value to me because of the social conditions which are prevailing currently. So the two statements are quite different from each other. Education is without value, and education is without value to me, given the history of discrimination. So unless we recognize this, and this is something which has been consistently swept underneath the carpet, it will be very difficult to reduce the social disparity in educational attainments. So I'll stop at this point, and what I'll do is I'm going to go to the UDICE site. If you go to UDICE Plus, wait. Actually, they had the data before. I've downloaded the data. Oh God. So these are the school. Oh, I think now they're charging. No, I don't think. Let me stop the recording. You have to have a